In the following videos, we're going to be talking about how to open and close your pool. This goes along with your opening and closing checklist. The first thing that you're going to do when you get to the pool is find your lockbox. It should look something like this, and every year your manager will give you the code. Inside you'll find your keys and or key fob to let you into your pool. It's super important that you do not give this code out to any pedestrians or anyone who does not work with AMS. If that does happen, we will need to change the lockbox codes and we will have to do an investigation to see how they got out. Once you get to your pool and inside your pump room or guard room, you want to clock in using the Clock In app that you've been assigned that year. After that, you're going to make sure you have your hip pack and your keys, and you're going to place your keys in this back pocket of the hip pack and zip it up so you don't lose it. If you're an opening guard, you need to have this, and whenever the closing guard comes in, you will give the keys to the closing guard to take care of. A middle guard should never have the keys, so that way they're not ever lost. You also want to be sure that you don't lock them in your pump room or your guard room because we do have some automatically locking doors. So just make sure they're always on you, and then you keep this hip pack on the whole time. You also want to make sure that your guard and pump room doors are always locked so that you're the only one who has access to them. It would be terrible if a little kid got in or one of the patrons, so just make sure they're always locked behind you.
One of the first things you're going to do during your opening checklist is check your water levels and check your chemical levels. Your water levels, we want to be halfway up these top tiles. So if it's low or if it's high, you're going to call your manager and let them know, and they'll tell you whether or not you need to turn on your fill line. Another thing that you're going to do is check your chemical levels. Your chemical levels, we ideally want the chlorine to be at a 3 and a 7.4 for the pH. The 7.4 is actually because our blood is a 7.4 pH, so we want that to match up. So the way that you check your chemicals is by opening up this test kit, and you as a lifeguard are going to use the yellow colors and the red colors. If anytime you forget what we're about to talk about, just know directions are up here, and the red corresponds with the red up here, which is your pH, and the yellow corresponds up here with the yellow, which is your chlorine. So what you're going to do is get out your test vial. Looks like this, and you're going to fill it up to the top indicators on both of these. When you are scooping up the water, just know that you need to go at least 6 inches deep under the water, just because the top has a lot of sunscreen. It also has other chemicals, any kind of bodily fluids, stuff like that. So we want to go as low as we possibly can. We're going to get our R1, R2, and R4. So first we're going to talk about checking the chlorine. So we're going to do 5 drops of R1 into the smaller section of the vial. And when you're doing your drops, make sure it is vertical, just because that is the ideal drop amount. R2, we're going to do 5 drops. And then the red, when we are checking pH, we're going to do 5 drops into this larger section of the vial. We are then going to put the lid on, and we're going to shake it just for a few seconds until everything's all mixed up. And then you're going to compare the color that you just created to the colors that are obviously given on the vial, which will tell us whether or not we're at a 3 and a 7.4. If at any time it is not a 3, 7.4, we are going to call our manager and let them know, and they will tell you how to adjust. We not only check chemicals at the beginning and end of the day, but we also do this every hour of our shift, just to make sure that our chemical levels stay perfect while we have patrons before and after. Whenever you're done checking chemicals, it is perfectly fine just to dump this out. All our reagents are completely safe, so just dump it back into the pool. And when you're putting this vial back into the test kit, make sure you put it upside down. That way the water can drop out, and then you have a nice dry vial for when you check your chemicals next.
An important part of your opening checklist is cleaning out your skimmer baskets. This right here is what a skimmer basket lid looks like. Skimmers work by pulling in water from the top of your pool. So basically, if any leaves or flowers do fall into your pool, these skimmers will suck them into the baskets. So we are going to show cleaning out a skimmer basket. You're gonna undo the lid, reach in, and pull out your skimmer basket. It will likely have leaves and flowers from the top of your surface. Every time you pull out a basket, you do want to replace the lid as it is a safety hazard. Once you have one basket, you're gonna walk around with that basket to the other skimmer basket. We do this to increase efficiency, so that way you're not going to the trash can every time you pull out a skimmer. Once you have two skimmers, you can just clam them together and get all of the dirt out of it and replace it. Make sure that when you replace your skimmer basket, you are pushing it all the way down so it's not floating at the surface. If it does float at the surface, it won't pull leaves as efficiently. Your pool will have quite a few skimmer baskets, so make sure you get to each one and empty each basket out. Your manager will likely follow up and check to make sure you've emptied these skimmer baskets. Once you've emptied all of them out, you need to make sure you dump it in a trash can, not on the side of your pool deck and not in the woods. If we see a bunch of leaves and needles on the side of your pool deck, we'll know that you have been dumping them on the side. So just please bring them to a trash can every time you clean out your skimmer baskets.
Another part of your opening checklist is to check for vacuum caps. These are super important because these caps are covering holes that are on the side of your pool wall that can sometimes have suction. So we need to make sure that all of our vacuum caps are in place. You'll probably have about 2 to 4 on your pool, just depending on the size of your pool. But it's just really important that during your orientation, you know where these vacuum caps are, because these need to be checked every morning and every single closing of your pool. So these just screw directly into the side, and they're pretty easy to get out, and also they can fall out very easily. This is what your vacuum cap looks like after you screw it out. They screw in and screw out really easily. So if you see these at the bottom of your pool or on the side of your pool deck or even on the lifeguard stand, just make sure you call your manager right away and they'll walk you through the steps of what to do next.
Another part of your opening checklist is to skim the pool. This is our skimmer net and this is our pole, and you connect them by pushing in the white parts and then popping them into the holes just like that. Then when you're skimming the pool, you want to make sure that you get all the leaves and all the worms and all the little flowers. So make sure you're skimming the top, the middle of the pool, and then of course getting the leaves and worms at the bottom of your pool. This helps out your head guard, so that way when they get to the pool to vacuum, everything is already pretty good, and it also makes all of your patrons happy to have a clean pool when they get there. If you're having trouble reaching a section of your pool, you can extend the pole. What you'll do is twist it one way, pull it out, it'll come out 12 additional feet, and then you just have to twist it back and it'll lock in place. Part of your opening checklist is to blow off your deck. When you arrive at the pool, you need to make sure that your pool looks resort ready for your first patron. So whenever you're blowing off the deck, make sure you get rid of all the pine straw needles, all the leaves, etc., just to make sure that your pool deck looks amazing. Remember, you do want to blow away from the pool so that way you don't risk getting any of those pine straw or leaves into your pool. And if you blow into concrete, make sure you sweep it up at the end. The best place to blow into it would be foliage, just like what's behind me, so that way all the pine straw goes back to where it originally was. As you're walking around with your blower, you also need to make sure you're keeping an eye out for trash on the pool deck. If your manager comes to your pool and there is trash, they're going to ask you why you walked past it and didn't pick it up. So just make sure that every little piece of trash is picked up, put in the trash, and that all your pine straw and leaves are blown off the deck. Another part of your opening closing checklist is to make sure that trash is always taken out. When you're the opening guard, you need to go around to all of your trash cans, take a look in, and make sure that the trash was taken out at the end of the day and that they replaced the liners with a new one at the end. During your shift, you do want to make sure that you're going around checking the trash cans, and if it gets full, make sure you take it out. And also at the end of the day, you'll be checking to make sure that if there's any food in there, or that if it is a third of the way full, you take out the trash liner. So if you look in here, you see some snacks, it's halfway full, anything like that, you're gonna take it out, bring it to your trash can or dumpster, and replace it with a new liner. You will have a trash day at each pool that your manager will alert you of, and it's very imperative that you take the trash out on trash day so that way the trash does not get missed.
When you enter your pump room, this is what it should sound like. And if at any time you do not hear any noises from your pump room or it sounds a little bit different, make sure you call your manager right away so they can come check out if something's wrong. These big round things are your filters, but what's most important on this is your PSI gauge. This is reading the amount of pressure that's inside of these filters, and these are super important because you check them during your opening and closing checklist. There's going to be a piece of duct tape that tells you what the filter pressure should be at, and if it needs to be at 20, you're going to call your manager anytime it is either 5 over or 5 below 20. So if it's 25, call your manager. If it's 15, call your manager, because that means that someone needs to come here and figure out what's going on and what's the issue inside of these things. There are also red wristbands connected to these filters, and red means that this is something that lifeguards should not touch. So just know, do not touch anything that has a red wristband on it. This is the fill line for your pool. It is going to be labeled, and it also has a blue wristband on it. Currently this is closed because it is perpendicular with the pipe. If you ever need to turn it on, you're going to turn it so that it is parallel with the pipe, and you're going to put this blue wristband on. What that is showing you is that the fill line's on, so that way it's a reminder to not ever leave the pool with either the blue wristband on your wrist or the fill line's on. If you are the opening guard and the water needs to stay on, just give this wristband to the closing guard so they know that it needs to be turned off before they leave. When you do need to turn it off, what you're going to do is put the wristband back and turn it back to the perpendicular. It needs to be a 90-degree angle when you are closing it, otherwise there's still water running through that pipe. A part of your opening checklist is to see how much bleach is left in your bleach barrels. In order to check it, you're just going to lift up a cap or a tennis ball or whatever's being used and just see how empty it is. You can also shake your bleach barrels that are empty because it's going to be really heavy if it is full. Once you get down to only a half barrel of one left, you're going to call your area manager and let them know. Even though, let's say the checklist the day before says the person let the manager know, make sure you keep letting the manager know that you are low on bleach until there is a refill. We never want to get to the point where we are completely out of bleach, because that means our pools are not getting chlorinated correctly. This is your dolphin feeder, which is one of the types of chlorinators that we use. This controls how much bleach goes into the pool. What happens is that these giant things are your bleach barrels, and they contain obviously a ton of bleach. Goes through your dolphin feeder, and that goes into the pipes. We have what we call our normal setting, and that is the number that's at the top. Most of your pools are going to be a 1 unless your manager states otherwise. But anytime that you do need to change the chlorinator, we have our yellow wristbands, and that means that your chlorinator is not at normal settings. So if I call my manager and they tell me to turn the dolphin feeder to a 5, I'm going to turn this to a 5 so that the 5 is on top, and I'm going to put on this yellow wristband. Until the next time that I do need to change the dolphin feeder, or when my chlorine levels go back to normal, I'm going to keep this yellow wristband on, and we are also going to make sure that we do not take this off or leave the pool until it's back to normal settings. Once we need to put it back to normal settings, I'm going to take this yellow wristband off, put it back on top, and turn it back to normal settings, which is a 1 or whatever your pool is assigned to. This is another type of chlorinator, but it is called a rainbow chlorinator. You can remember it because it kind of looks like the tower at a castle. Castles and rainbows kind of go together. That's kind of how we like to think of it. So this rainbow chlorinator is most likely going to be for your smaller pools like slide pools and baby pools, but the normal setting is also probably going to be a 1. However, it's really treated the same way as the dolphin feeder that we showed you earlier, so make sure that anytime it is not on a 1, we put this yellow wristband on. Anytime that we are putting it back to a 1, put the yellow wristband back on top. So this is your opening and closing checklist binder, and this is something that you're going to fill out if you are an opening or closing guard. So what this is these are all the tasks that you need to get done during your time on your shift. If you're an opening guard, ideally you need to get this all done before you get on stand. We give you plenty of time to make sure you complete all of this, but basically you're going to put the date, the time, and also everyone who's going to be completing this opening checklist. So if there are multiple opening guards, just know there are going to be multiple names on this line. Next to each task, there is a little line, and that is where you're going to put your initial when you complete it. So since you guys are splitting it up, if there's multiple guards, if there is a different person, there should be a different initial for each thing. So that lets your manager know that the tasks were distributed evenly, and also I know as a manager who I need to follow up with if something was not completed correctly. Some lines do have places where you need to circle whether, let's say, your pressure was high or low or it was good. You're going to circle which one it is. So make sure you do read them fully and make sure you do everything to 110%. If you are the closing guard, you're going to do this after you clear your pool and get off stand. And you also need an initial next to every task that you complete. Multiple closing guards also means you would also divide up the tasks evenly. This is your chemical and restroom log binder, and this is super important because anytime that you have a lifeguard break, it is a working break, so there are things you need to do during that time. Depending on your log, you can see at what time what needs to get done. So if it is at 9 a.m., you will have to check your chemicals of every pool that you have here, and it also tells you that you need to do a quick check of the restroom. Even though this is not a full deep clean, this does mean that you do need to go into the restrooms, make sure everything is stocked and supplied, and also just make sure everything looks pretty good in there. There's no paper towels on the floor, anything like that. And this log will tell you what needs to get done every hour, but just make sure that, once again, you're going to write whatever levels chems are at, and you're also going to initial when you do your restroom checks.
The last binder is your operations binder. Here you're going to find any reports that you need to fill out. The first one is your first aid report. This is going to be whenever you have to glove up and actually touch the guest in distress, such as helping them put on a band-aid, take out a splinter from their heel. Anytime you need to glove up, this needs to be signed by you and the guest. It also has a place for you to write some details to describe what happened. The next report is going to be your pool contamination report. This is when you're going to have fecal contamination or a vomit contamination of your pool. You would fill this report out and circle which one, and you do need to have a witness sign to say they did in fact see the contamination. The next report is going to be your pool incident report. This is when anything happens where you want to let the HOA know that there was an incident. So this could be you had to kick someone out for bad behavior, there was a missing child, anything that you need to let the HOA know about. It's much better if they hear it from us first before hearing it from one of their neighborhood. This next report is your lifeguard rescue report. You're going to fill this out anytime you make a rescue and actually touch a guest in distress. You will have to get this report and fill it out with the guest in distress, so that way you can get some of their personal information, and both you and the guest will need to sign this document. This report is the unconscious victim report. You will fill this out if you ever make a rescue and the guest in distress is unconscious. This last document is your rainy day / known as at your pool checklist. You're going to be filling this out every time you're not actually on the lifeguard stand. So if it's a stormy day, no one's at your pool, or if you have extra time on your break, we love to see that you fill this out and taken the initiative to keep your pool facility as clean as you possibly can. So you would just go ahead and initial whatever tasks you've completed, as well as putting the date. If there are multiple guards there, we do want to see the initials of every single guard to make sure that it was equally distributed. If you are at a big facility with multiple guards, we also expect you to complete this multiple times a day. This is your job, which means we never want to see you sitting down doing absolutely nothing, which is why we've created this checklist, to give you purpose throughout the day if you don't feel like you have anything else you can do. Once this checklist is completed, please call your manager so that way they know you've done a great job and you've cleaned your pool facility, and they can come and check to make sure everything is perfect.